A passionate teacher accuses a student of bullying, only to realize the girl she's targeted is the mayor's daughter. In a twist, both are forced to confront their own hidden truths. But before we start, if you guys like this story, please comment below and subscribe to Story. Storer, please hit the bell icon. Thank you. Ms. Clarkson stood in the middle of the classroom, her hands trembling as she held the student's folder. Her gaze was hard, like steel, her words sharp and unwavering. "Emily Lawrence, I've had enough of your behavior. I won't tolerate bullying in my classroom, not on my watch." The room fell into an oppressive silence, the kind that hung thick like smoke. The students shifted uneasily in their seats, glancing at each other with wide eyes. Emily, the mayor's daughter, sat in the back, her arms crossed over her chest. The defiance in her eyes was as clear as ever. "Miss Clarkson," Emily muttered, her voice laced with a mixture of disbelief and anger, "I'm not bullying anyone." But the teacher wasn't listening. She turned sharply, addressing the class. "Emily has been intimidating students for weeks now, taunting, isolating, spreading rumors. And the worst part? She does it all under the radar, until now." Emily's eyes flashed with hurt, but also something darker, something that suggested this had all gone too far. Her posture remained still, but the tension in the air was palpable. The door swung open and the principal entered, his expression grim. "Miss Clarkson, a word." As the teacher walked out, the whispers began. They swirled around the room, mingling with the hum of uncertainty. What had just happened? How had the proud, principled Miss Clarkson, who had always been the champion of justice, come to this moment? Miss Clarkson had always been a teacher who prided herself on protecting her students. She had been in the profession for nearly 15 years, working with everyone from the brightest to the most troubled. It was her calling, her passion. She knew what bullying looked like. She knew the signs. Emily Lawrence had transferred to the school only a few months ago, and from the very beginning, Miss Clarkson noticed something off. The girl was quiet, aloof, and had a way of casting a shadow over her classmates without even trying. The subtle power dynamic she wielded was almost invisible, but undeniable. The first complaint came from a shy girl named Sarah, who claimed Emily had spread rumors about her being a teacher's pet. Then there was Tyler, who said Emily had manipulated his friends into turning against him. The stories kept piling up, each more troubling than the last. Miss Clarkson had tried to keep an open mind. She spoke to Emily privately, but the girl had always been dismissive, acting like she was above it all. And yet, every time Miss Clarkson asked other students about Emily, they seemed reluctant to speak out. It was as if Emily's presence cast a long, intimidating shadow. That's when Miss Clarkson made the decision. It was time to confront Emily directly. She wasn't going to let it continue. After the confrontation in class, everything began to unravel quickly. Miss Clarkson's accusation reverberated throughout the school. Parents were upset, students were confused, and the teachers were divided. Some felt Emily had gotten off lightly for too long, while others believed Miss Clarkson was being too harsh. In an emergency meeting, the principal, Mr. Anderson, made it clear that the situation was more complicated than Miss Clarkson had anticipated. "Do you realize the gravity of this?" Principal Anderson asked, his face pale. "This isn't just about one student. Emily Lawrence's father is the mayor. These kinds of accusations can destroy not just the reputation of the student, but of the entire school." Ms. Clarkson tried to hold her ground. "I'm not making this up. I have the evidence. I've seen the effects of her behavior firsthand." Anderson shook his head. "It doesn't matter if you're right or if your intentions are good. This has turned into a public issue. The mayor's office is involved." Ms. Clarkson felt the walls closing in. She had always fought for what was right, but now she was being forced to question everything. The consequences of her actions seemed more dire than she had ever anticipated. The media caught wind of the story quickly. Headlines blared across local newspapers. Social media erupted with furious posts, and the scandal spread like wildfire. Emily's father, Mayor Richard Lawrence, publicly defended his daughter, insisting that the accusations were unfounded. "My daughter may be outspoken, but she's no bully," the mayor declared in a press conference. "The teacher's claims are unsubstantiated, and we will be taking legal action if necessary." Miss Clarkson's world tilted. Her name was now tied to a public scandal, and the weight of it all was suffocating. The school board was pressuring her to apologize, and whispers of suspension had already begun. Her career was teetering on the brink. But as the tension mounted, something strange began to happen. Despite all the controversy, Emily began to change. The girl who once sat in the back of the class with a smirk now seemed different. Less confident, more withdrawn. Miss Clarkson couldn't figure it out. Was it guilt or something else entirely? One afternoon, as Miss Clarkson was heading to the teacher's lounge, she saw Emily sitting alone, staring out the window, her face pale and tired. For the first time, the girl seemed vulnerable. "Why don't you say something?" Miss Clarkson asked, her voice softer than she intended. "Why don't you defend yourself?" Emily didn't look up. Instead, she sighed deeply. "You think I haven't tried? You think I don't want to stand up for myself? But no one listens. No one ever listens." Miss Clarkson was taken aback by the rawness in Emily's voice. There was no defiance, no arrogance, just a quiet, painful honesty. "Then why did you do it? Why hurt others?" Emily hesitated, then spoke in a near whisper. "Because I didn't know how else to make them care. My father, he's the mayor. Everyone expects so much from me. I thought if I could control things, control people, then maybe I'd matter." It was a confession that shattered everything Miss Clarkson thought she knew about the girl. It wasn't about power or cruelty. It was about the pressures of being the mayor's daughter, of living in a world where expectations suffocated you. As days passed, Miss Clarkson discovered that Emily's actions were not driven by malice, but by deep insecurity and desperation for control. In a private session with the school counselor, Emily revealed the weight of being the mayor's daughter. "My father never has time for me," she confessed. "He only cares about my image. I thought if I could control people, maybe I'd matter." Emily's bullying wasn't about power over others. It was a defense mechanism to cope with her feelings of worthlessness. She used manipulation to create a facade of control, hiding her vulnerabilities. The more Emily opened up, the more Miss Clarkson realized the complexity of the situation. Emily wasn't just bullying her peers, she was bullying herself, trapped in a cycle of emotional neglect and pressure. Miss Clarkson now understood that the real villain wasn't Emily, but the suffocating expectations placed on her. The school board meeting was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Miss Clarkson sat nervously as Emily stood up, her figure smaller than usual, the weight of the room bearing down on her. Emily's voice cracked as she began. "I was wrong. I've hurt people, more than I ever realized." Her eyes flickered to Miss Clarkson, filled with a raw vulnerability that hadn't been there before. "I thought if I could control others, I'd finally matter. But all I did was push people away." A hushed silence fell over the room. Emily's apology wasn't just for the bullying, but for the pain she had caused. For the first time, she was honest, not only with others, but with herself. Her words were a breakthrough, not just for her, but for Miss Clarkson as well. The room began to soften, and even the most skeptical members of the board seemed moved by her courage. After the apology, the board cleared Miss Clarkson to return to the classroom. She was no longer just the teacher who had accused the mayor's daughter. She was the teacher who had helped uncover the truth. The suspension was lifted, but Miss Clarkson knew things had changed forever. She had learned the hard way that assumptions could be dangerous, but she had also seen firsthand how honesty and understanding could heal wounds. Emily's journey was just beginning. She started attending therapy to address her emotional struggles, and the bullying stopped. Though the scars from the past remained, both teacher and student began to rebuild their trust. For Miss Clarkson, the experience had become a powerful lesson in the complexity of human behavior. They weren't simply teacher and student anymore. They were two people learning to change and grow together.